With that, I'd invite two very old friends, Bettina Dorendorf from KfW and Dr. Markus Seifert, who's a partner at DeFine, to join me now on this panel discussion to present the results of the EEFIG work, which Hans referred to. One of the presentations that Bettina is going to summarize actually was provided at COP26 as EEFIG's contribution to that debate. But what we're going to do for you now is in the next half an hour, summarize some of the work which has already been published. These publications, as we go along, have been made available through the EU's Publications Office, and we will provide them as feedback also to those of you who are interested. So with that, and without further ado, I welcome you, Bettina, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. My name is Bettina Dorendorf. I'm working at KfW as Sustainable Finance Manager. KfW, by the way, is involved in the work of the EEFIG since the beginning in 2013. So let me briefly set the scene for my presentation. Early 2015, the EEFIG, mandated by the European Commission, DG and UNEP-FI, published a report called Energy Efficiency, the First Fuel for the EU Economy, How to Drive New Finance for Energy Efficiency Investments. In light of the current energy crisis in Europe, the title could have been drafted today. It was a landmark report serving as a source of inspiration since then for professionals and policymakers involved in bringing forward the energy efficiency industry. Today, I will present a summary of the recent update of this report. We call it EEFIG 2.0, revisiting the most relevant themes and providing an update on the drivers and barriers of energy efficiency investments, as well as asking for the state of development of the investment market and follow up on the degree of implementation of the recommendations for policymakers and market participants. The co-authors of this report will be available for the Q&A session. So since 2015, we saw a significant shift in the political and societal landscape towards sustainability. This goes in line with the dense and dynamic regulatory agenda led by the European institutions, which are supposed to impact energy efficiency investments. This dynamic, however, cannot be observed with regard to the investment volume. In the period between 2016 and 2019, efficiency investments in Europe were in the range of 60 billion euros per year, however, increasing to 75 in 2020, according to an EIB investment report. Let me underline that there is no comprehensive and systematic tracking of efficiency investments so that we assume that the overall volume is higher. Nevertheless, the aggregate energy efficiency investment must increase by a factor much more than 2 to achieve a new climate and energy targets. And a special sectoral focus should be on buildings, industry, and SMEs. And for this, the market needs a strong push. And driving demand for energy efficiency investments deserves special attention as it remains the most important challenge. Next slide, please. Next. So let me briefly recap the approach taken and the key results of the first EEFIG report, in particular for those of you in this meeting who were not involved at the time or don't know the report. The focus was on identifying the key drivers of investment. In this process, we distinguish between the drivers of demand for investment, so the customer's perspective or the perspective of the investment decision maker, from the drivers of supply of investment funds, so the perspective of the financial institutions, investment funds, etc. EEFIG took a sector and subsector specific approach and focused on first understanding the needs of the different stakeholder groups by asking to rank the importance of the drivers from their perspective, the needs, for instance, as regards data, information, financial offer, policy support, regulatory environment, to drive demand for investment, and the specific needs of financial institutions to offer suitable finance for energy efficiency in the different sectors. The drivers of investment differ significantly depending on the subsectors in question and the group of decision makers and market actors, resulting in the need to take a close look at the decision when designing any kind of measure. The need for public and private actors to collaborate in the creation of a fruitful investment environment was another important conclusion. All in all, this was a novel approach comparable to what we call today co-creation, allowing to address the very complex and fragmented energy efficiency market and draw specific conclusions and recommendations targeting the different groups of actors. Most of the recommendations from 2015 remain relevant today, and that's why the first report is still an inspiring and informative reading. Let me highlight 3 areas where the findings and recommendations were implemented with the support of the European Commission. First, public accounting. The accounting treatment of energy performance contracts for the public sector was recommended to be changed to allow unlocking significant investment in the public building sector, especially for those public entities with a debt ceiling. This was addressed by Eurostat in 2017 in a note to clarify that investments made and financed with the support of energy performance contracts do not count as public debt. It seems, however, that public authorities are widely unaware of this change, so further promotion is required to unlock this investment potential. Second, the need for energy efficiency performance data to build a clear business case for investments and increase investor confidence came out as a cross-cutting driver for demand and supply for building and corporate energy efficiency investments. This led to the creation of the De-risking Energy Efficiency Platform, called DEEP, which was created to understand the risks and benefits of energy efficiency investments through reference data. It is Europe's largest open source database for monitoring and benchmarking energy efficiency investment performance. Third, standardization across all aspects of the investment value chain came out as an important cross-cutting driver as well. In particular, from the perspective of financial institutions, the lack of commonly agreed procedures and standards for energy efficiency investment underwriting is seen as a driver of transaction costs. And this was addressed by the publication of the EEFIG Underwriting Toolkit. This is designed for financial institutions to scale up deployment of capital for energy efficiency, and it helps underwriters and risk departments to understand the nature of efficiency investments, as well as helps developers understand the need of financial institutions. Next slide, please. Next, please. Okay, let's have a look at the recommendations of the EEFIG 2.0 update report. And I can only, for the sake of time, outline a few of them. So connecting the key drivers of energy efficiency investments with specific approaches and instruments, and also defining the party, policymakers, market actors, or financial institutions to take the lead is one of the important added values of the first EEFIG report. The recommendations to the European Commission in the new report should be understood to complement and update and not to replace the existing ones, which largely remain valid. Let me highlight some of them. EEFIG recommends that efficiency-related policies are implemented quickly, ensuring their effective enforcement, as already pointed out earlier. Making sure projects financed with the EU funds are selected based on highest energy savings potential is another point. We also think that facilitating more than now the growth of energy performance contracting and the use of energy service companies to strengthen their role in deploying energy efficiency investments in the building sector and for SMEs can contribute to the required market push. And we think promoting the energy efficiency first principle in the public procurement processes would contribute. Another recommendation is the development of large-scale financial instruments for corporates and buildings, however, also involving private distribution partners to assure the instrument's broad scope of reach. Last but not least, making sure the use of databases such as DEEP is made mandatory for publicly funded projects to help growing the evidence base and support building an investment business case and improve transparency for a better quality risk assessment, which is so important for financial institutions. Next slide, please. Driving demand for energy efficiency investments is still the most important challenge, also for the building sector. Next slide. In 2015, among the top demand drivers we identified were a standardization, a clear business case, as well as the awareness of the opportunities at key decision maker level, also supporting building legislation and the improvement of the quality of energy performance certificates, as well as low transaction costs. Identifying the drivers of demand for energy efficiency investments in the building sector requires a subsector approach. It is key to understand the specific needs of investors and decision makers in terms of information, practical and technical support, and advisory, as well as access to finance. The lack of technical know-how is one of the barriers across all building segments, confirming the need for one-stop shop models and technical assistance as a driver to navigate the existing complexity. Financial aspects also include affordability and access to finance, with particular relevance for residential buildings. As regards the public sector, we think that green procurement rules and clear public sector targets can be supportive to drive investments. Let me also add the need for skilled workforce for successful implementation of building measures, which we, at least in Germany, observe as a clear constraint. Next slide, please. The public sector, without doubt, needs to play an exemplary role. There seems to be, however, still a discrepancy between the objectives and reality, as pointed out by a group of 8 European Supreme Audit institutions in 2018, who state that the leading role in terms of energy efficiency investments should be implemented in a more comprehensive and systematic manner. Technical assistance, in particular for the public sector, is critical to driving demand, and it is worth pointing out that the EU facilities such as ELENA, inter alia, already successfully contribute to this. Next slide, please. As regards recommendations to the European Commission for the building sector, let me highlight only a few here. Energy performance certificates should play an important role, and the Commission should promote that the Member States set minimum performance standards based on the EPCs. This, however, has to go along with an improvement of quality and transparency of the energy performance certificates. And to deliver these standards, the building owners need financial products that combine or blend, in the ideal case, public grants with mortgages or renovation loans, including technical assistance as a part of the financing package. As an example for such an approach offered by a public bank, let me mention the Federal Promotion for Energy Efficiency in Buildings in Germany, which is actually also outlined in the report, together with a wealth of other best practice examples and lessons learned for financing approaches, by the way. We further recommend scaling up European funding for technical assistance and involve a broad range of institutions and platforms in their deployment, including one-stop shops and other retail-facing platforms and organizations. Next slide, please. Next one. So what are the recommendations as regards industries and SMEs? Corporates should actually engage in the monitoring and management of energy consumption using established systems and standards such as ISO 50001. One further, please. One back, sorry. Thank you. So the industrial sector is a major energy consumer and greenhouse gas emitter, responsible for approximately 25% of greenhouse gas emissions from energy and industrial processes. Therefore, the potential for energy efficiency improvements is huge. In the last years, the volume of efficiency investments in the corporate and industrial sector, according to the latest EIB investment report, was around 5 billion euros per year, and with no such an increase in 2020 as observed for the building sector. One of the main characteristics of the EU industrial sector is its complexity and highly fragmented nature, as 99% is composed by SMEs with a large share of micro-enterprises, hence with a low capacity to systematically explore energy savings. Although it is difficult to estimate due to a lack of systematic data tracking for this sector, the investment gap is estimated to be in the order of 14 billion per year to reach the current European climate and energy goals. In any case, a much smaller challenge as for the building sector. Now please turn one more. Thank you. So looking at the key drivers of energy efficiency investment funds, we think that energy service companies should play a more prominent role by providing advice and finance. The clear business case they can provide, including guaranteed savings, rank among the key drivers from the perspective of financial institutions. Developing also an EU-wide fiscal framework to facilitate off-balance sheet investments in line with the Eurostat guidance for the public sector could also be a helpful approach to consider. So what are the recommendations here? Some highlights for the sake of time. Corporates should engage. Next one now, please. Corporates should engage in the monitoring and management of energy consumption using established systems and standards such as ISO 50001. And we think that there is a need to work on the standardization of industry-specific efficiency solutions and develop sector-specific standards and tools, as well as grow and use the energy efficiency networks as a knowledge-sharing platform. Recommendations also include the need to facilitate dedicated finance for ESCOs, and let me also highlight the need to expand the research as regards energy efficiency investments in industries. And let me point out that when working on the section of this report, the lack of well-documented information on the corporate energy efficiency investment market was a constraint. Next one, please. Thank you. Let's now look at the perspective of financial institutions. The main barriers identified in 2015 remain critical. High investment costs, as energy efficiency solutions are more capital intensive than less efficiency solutions and often have longer paybacks. High transaction costs, as energy efficiency investments are generally small, and last but not least, the need to better understand project risk characteristics, and therefore real energy performance data is a growing issue for financial institutions, as we already heard. We also think that the growing societal engagement and expansion of the regulatory framework, not only in relation to energy efficiency, but also ESG aspects in general, would drive the engagement of more financial institutions and support the development of financial products to address the specificities of energy efficiency investments. Last slide, please. So what are the recommendations for financial institutions? We think that it's a good idea to make use of public guarantees to support private finance. What should this be good for? To mitigate credit risk related to efficiency finance, especially for low-income households and SMEs or companies with weak credit rating, to reduce the risk associated with innovative technologies or technologies in the early market penetration, and also to adequately cover long-term risks. We think financial institutions should promote the development of scalable financial instruments such as on-bill repayment, on-tax financing, green mortgages, renovation loans, and also continue work on the standardization of the investment processes, so important for a better aggregation of projects. So let me summarize. we are far away from the investment level required to meet the climate and energy goals. Driving demand for energy efficiency investments remains the main challenge. Therefore, scaling up the project pipeline by understanding the needs of the subsector-specific market actors involved in investment decisions should be in the focus of attention. A continuing and intense collaboration of policy and market actors on the basis of the drivers of demand and supply for energy efficiency investments will be crucial success elements to unlock the potential of energy efficiency. And with this, let me conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bettina. I really appreciate you fitting so much information into such a short period of time. For those of you who are willing to read further, the report that Bettina has described was compiled by a working group of EEFIG over 2 years. Thank you to our chapter leads, who each one of us dealt with a separate issue there. And the link to the full report has been put into the chat for those of you interested.